The excitement has already begun. It's the Georgia Technology Summit, TAG's flagship event, and it's all coming this March 25th to the Cobb Galleria. No ordinary event. This is the technology event of the year. That's right, it brings together top executives, top entrepreneurs, technology professionals, and academia. From the presentations by the top 40 most innovative companies in Georgia to the induction ceremony for this year's Technology Hall of Fame recipient, the State of the Industry Report, and more, much more. Greetings, everyone, and welcome from the Technology Association of Georgia. It's February the 6th, 2014, and this is Tech Talk. I'm your host, Frank Baia. You can be part of it all right now, from the sponsorship to corporate tables to even applying for consideration as a top 40 innovative company. But you must act now in advance of another anticipated sellout audience. This year's featured speakers, once again, represent some of the global technology most notable thought leaders and include Hal Gregerson, Executive Director of and Senior Lecturer in Leadership and Innovation at MIT Sloan School of Management, Diarmuid O'Connell, VP Business Development at Tesla, and today's Tech Talk special guest, John Rossman, Managing Director with Alvarez Marsal in Seattle, Washington, specializing in multi-technological strategy and platform enablement in multiple industries, including real estate, service, and the public sector. He has more than 26 years of technology strategy, design, implementation, and operating experience, and has led businesses and programs resulting in innovative business models. John is the author of The Amazon Way, 14 Leadership Principles of the World's Most Disruptive Companies, and an expert on digital disruption, assisting clients to build and execute new strategies for the digital economy of today and beyond. It's the Georgia Technology Summit 2015, and it's all about disruptive innovation, the power to inspire. And on this edition of Tech Talk, we learn exclusive insights from one of this year's event's most anticipated keynote speakers, John Rossman. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. John, welcome to Tech Talk.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, we've lived through dynamic fluidity and exponential, and I think we moved into phantasmagoric. We're now into disruptive, and disruptive innovation seems to be a term that everybody's talking about. But I think when we are talking about that terminology, we're talking to the expert. Tell us from your perspective, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, well, first I think the first word, digital, I think really means enabled by data and by technology and by new form factors and new connectivity. And so I think that's really kind of what the digital aspect of that. And disruption, I think, is the more important part. And, you could call it innovation. You could talk about it in lots of ways, but I think disruption is a better term because it's hard change, and it changes cultures, it changes the roles and the jobs that are needed. It can really shift dynamics, and I don't think that people always understand, like, it's always a feel-good kind of moment or experience, and so disruption, I think, really paints the picture of it's a difficult growth period, and there's winners and losers, and it's hard change.
Well, is there, I mean, it can, being somewhat theoretical here, but can you really have hard change in such a dynamic environment anymore? Or is that a case where, change requires a consistent, for some period of time, that becomes a standard, but things are so 20 minutes ago, can you really face change and assume that it'll stay stable enough to make any kind of real decisions?
Well, I think that's actually part of what's so interesting now is how quickly that change happens, and that's one of the new capabilities and muscles that teams and organizations need to struggle with is the idea of a 5-year plan or multi-year projects is getting to be a little bit of an antiquated one or not really fit for this type of situation. And so, the small iterations, quickly being able to get things to market, quickly learning, quickly adjusting is part of the nature of the change.
Don't you feel like in many cases the larger, and we will be talking about Amazon specifically in a couple of seconds here, but when you're dealing with such large organizations, that it's almost a case of less about innovation and more about unintended consequences or accidental excellence? And, do they really know enough to know where things are going, as you mentioned, in the long term, traditionally 3 to 5 years, but to move as quickly as some of the disruption is happening to take full advantage of it?
Well, they can't. I do see lots of examples where companies are being thoughtful and specific and clear about whether it's an operational improvement or a customer-facing improvement or a new go-to-market, a new revenue stream of being purposeful and executing upon it. But as you're kind of pointing out, a lot of it happens, kind of by accident and not fully planful either. And, either path can be good, but I do see companies being successful at pinpointing. And one of the hard things about it is just realizing that there's going to be a lot of trial and error in this. I think that's part of the nature of the opportunity in the situation. And some companies have a tough time understanding that it's a high error business, high risk business versus some of the types of things they're used to doing or have pretty good predictability, and as long as you're good at execution, you'll likely have success. It's not always the case here.
One of the new things that we've been exposed to just lately is hackathons and the idea of some form of open innovation that happens through team excitement and a challenge. Literally going to the extent of almost a gaming example where innovation potentially could become a spectator sport. I don't want to go there right now, but I mean, we just experienced a hackathon where we produced a 24-hour event between Atlanta and Spain with a fintech company that was looking for new financial innovations to do with wearables. And the top prize was $30,000, and it was all independent players that put together their teams and created this environment that was just amazingly innovatively charged in terms of some of the ideas and things that came about it. I'm not looking necessarily for a reaction, but I guess where I'm going is that how does Amazon play within the context of where it's been, where it is now, and where it's going? I guess the first thing that all of us would probably be curious about is what kind of sparked the idea that got you to write the book in the first place?
Yeah, so I was at Amazon for almost 4 years, got to run a couple of businesses for Amazon, the third-party selling business and then the enterprise services business at Amazon. And I came out of it just loaded with some great ideas, experiences, big techniques, small techniques. And as I got into my client business, I just had a number of clients who came to me and said, wow, your ability to, in small ways, just connect our situation with great examples and ideas stemming from Amazon is really impactful. And I had one client in particular at the Gates Foundation who is an editor by background, and he came to me and I had written one piece called Future Ready Self-Service, which is in an appendix in the book, and he was like, John, this is really good. And I said, well, if you like that, I've got 40 more ideas like that. And he said, and he gets a lot of people bringing him book ideas. That's part of his background. And he's like, you really ought to write a book. And I said, I'm the worst candidate to do that. I'm an engineer and I'm a consultant. And so I can kind of cobble together bullet points. And he goes, no, we can do this. So, I got to work on the manuscript, and I hired a contract writer, an editor, and a lawyer, and we figured out the right publishing path. And the book was pretty straightforward for me because these were the stories I've been using in my client work for, over 7 years now.
So I'm seeing a TV series instead of Castle. It'll be called Rossman.
Yeah, this may be the extent of my media career here. So,
well, when we're talking about Amazon, I mean, obviously we've got to talk about innovation. One of the things that we talk about here, we don't deal just in verticals of the industry, technology industry. We literally go across them all horizontally. Mm-hmm. And most of the time it's about the same thing, only different. Certainly they're being impacted by the high-speed connectivity, the ubiquitous of phones, and the cloud, and all of the things that you could look at from any vertical. But of course, right, it happens across horizontally, so it's impacting a lot. I guess really where I'm headed is that in that environment, and especially having Amazon as an example, you were inside as well as both outside in preparing the book. Talk a little bit about, instead of coming at the problem directly, kind of looking at it as a convergent point somewhere down the line. I'm guessing that you've got to have current understanding of what the market is going, what is happening in real time. But in order to make decisions, you've got to kind of cast your vision out to the future and say, if all things were to happen, what is it going to look like in 10 years? What is it going to look like in 20 years? Maybe go into some of the thinking. Do they approach it that way, or is there some other way that you can help our listeners to describe what makes Amazon so interesting as far as coming into the point of thinking about technology and disruption?
Well, I think for Amazon, and there's multiple ways that it happens, but what I saw primarily from Amazon was they would enter a market in one particular point, and they would partner and collaborate with others across a value stream, and they would come to learn the category, the customer, the business, and then they would figure out, where's their opportunity for Amazon. And I think that opportunity is largely shaped from, where they see a lack of a very good customer experience, a lack of transparency, a lot of brokers and middlemen, and what Jeff Bezos refers to as gatekeepers in the industry, and they look to see if they think that their particular niche in creating commerce-related experiences would have a sizable business, and then they're willing to sometimes slowly, sometimes more quickly explore and dive into that capability that's aligned with the business that they've already launched. So an example of this, is really the Amazon books and media business. They launched as a book retailer, 20 years ago, and then they nudge along there, and then 10 years ago they really invent the ebook category and the Kindle, and they keep nudging along there, and then in the past couple of years they get into book publishing and an actual publishing company and having authors and curating content. And so they're slowly, in this case, kind of traversing an entire industry scale and changing the rules of the road all the way along, and they're both enabling people in that value chain, and they're competing with them too. And that's part of the tension that you see start building with Amazon relative to their partners and collaborators and people participating in the value chain was, they're like, hey, in one case, we're facilitating together, in another case, we're direct competitors, and that gets complex.
Now, obviously, from a perspective, I was mentioning earlier about having a horizontal perspective because we deal with so many verticals. I guess in a way, Amazon did the same thing and gave them, one of the things that happens is you can be a quote-unquote a visionary simply by listening in terms of talking to CTOs and CEOs across each of those verticals. You start to hear a common thread or start to see an opportunity that seems to just come to the surface, that moment of non-existence just before it happens. I can see where Amazon probably had, as you're mentioning, a lot of opportunity in dealing with its core business, but as it consistently evolved, seeing and considering opportunities. What about a larger company that kind of does deal in a single vertical that has a difficult silo type of a situation that doesn't have that kind of expansive look about what's going on? I mean, how do they figure out how to innovate?
Well, I think from a strategic level, I would ask them the same questions that Amazon's asking, which is, if I look at the value chain in which I operate in, where is there kind of trapped margin, where is their poor customer experience, where do I have capabilities that others could leverage to it, or are there new categories, and so this would be more of a vertical view of it, are there other businesses where what I do well could be leveraged into and everything. But then I think from an execution standpoint, kind of where to start for a more traditional company is, I typically try to do two things with a client that's trying to do something like this. One is I like to focus on a real customer experience, and it just makes it more impactful. You end up with more ability to make changes, and companies will stick with it a little bit better if there's real customers involved. Secondly is give me a small team, and don't put too much, governance around it. Give me a small team that's empowered to get something impactful done. And then the third piece is relative to that, which is start with a future press release. And a future press release will outline a vision for what we're going to do, why it's important, and what were the hard issues that we had to do to make it accomplished. And it gives that small team the license to go drive change and get things done within that bigger company. And so those are three ingredients that I look for in a bigger company that's trying to build some of these capabilities.
I love it. That's really, I think, get it published. Look at it and see it as a PR release and see what it would look like.
That's right, and it helps get others on board.
Yeah.
And I had one of these when I was at Amazon, and I would just always use it as like, this is my license and obligation to go get this vision done, and it's your empowerment to go drive change.
Great idea. I'm going to use it. No, I'm kidding.
No, please. That's the whole goal.
One of the things that I think of when we're talking about change is the reality. The cliche about a man can make the same mistake for years and call it experience. You've got a lot of leadership in companies that have done it that way, and they're going to continue to do it that way. I guess I'm drifting in this whole arena of change, the subject of leadership principles. Maybe you can give us an indication of what was different or important at Amazon as it related to those kind of principles.
Sure. So, there's 14 leadership principles at Amazon. They just to give a taste, they starts with obsess over the customer, invent and simplify, have a bias for action, be vocally self-critical, and then the last one is deliver results. And there's more in between there, but those are examples. And I had a good friend who was at another big tech company, went to Amazon for a period of time, and then back to the tech company, and he commented to me of just like, the thing that's different about Amazon's leadership principles is that they're tactical and they're real, and you see them being used in everyday meetings. And so they're really an extension of management thinking and management strategy and management values. And so it allows a company to be less bureaucratic, to not have to roll everything up to leadership, and empower teams to make better, faster, smarter decisions, to be more agile. And so I think that's what's different about Amazon's leadership principles, is that they can really be used. Like if I have to do A, B, or C, I can run those things through these leadership principles, and it will help me make a better and more aligned decision to Amazon's thinking.
Eastern philosophers say that the solution is simple. It's in the implementation.
That's right. Yeah.
How does that work when you can read those 14 principles, but isn't it sort of organic? Doesn't it come over a period of time? Isn't not just something where I can say, pick up the book, look at the principles, and say, okay, starting tomorrow, I'm going to start thinking this way?
Well, I would never recommend in either singularity or entirety that any other team or company just takes these principles. I think the fact that they're just real and they help drive smart, consistent decisions, like that's the most important thing about them. But every company and team has to really think through, like, what would ours be there? So that would never be the point. But having consistency of vision, consistency of priorities, and how we make decisions is just a way to make better, more consistent decisions, and when a company starts getting to scale, how to help scale the organization.
I guess get out of the box would be the first step, and make sure that you've got an open-minded capability.
Well, absolutely, and that there's both, positive and negative reinforcements to, you cannot be in a status quo business. I mean, I think one of the best things about Amazon, and there's so many great things about being there, but every function is expected to be making progress. Nothing about the business is static. No operational component just like, yep, just run it again next year as you ran it this year. That's never the answer. And so there is a constant tension to improve operational leverage or results, to improve quality, to improve speed, to improve flexibility and scalability, and or to improve the customer experience. Every team is expected to be doing that, and there's plans and resources and metrics to drive that on a consistent basis, and it just creates this culture that is never static. And of all their organizational traits that I think are unique, they're just so comfortable with change.
Well, I guess our listeners would probably be intrigued to learn, and I know I would, in terms of, with describing it the way you have, can you say succinctly what business is Amazon really in today, and how would you describe that business?
Yeah, I think the answer is no, I can't. It really is a modern-day conglomerate, but that conglomerate is cohesive in nature. So, let's just talk through, what are different parts of this conglomerate? Well, there's a massive retail business, right? But even that retail business has multiple components to it, including, a large third-party services business and multiple different brands like Zappos and My Habit and lots of other brands that aren't Amazon. They're doing OEM branded products now within retail. There's a services business within Amazon. FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon, is a logistics business. There's a payments business. There's an advertising business. Those are all different types of services business. There's a cloud technology business, AWS, massive. You could break that down in 10 different ways. There's a devices business within Amazon, obviously, and there's a big content and publishing business, both written media and video and productions, and so that's what and there's probably some other components that I'm not even touching on, but the key is that all of these have synergies and strategic flow between them that is really articulated in the Amazon flywheel. And I think more and more Amazon Prime is a big piece of the cohesiveness between all of these different components to the business.
Well, obviously, we're quickly running out of time. One of the great opportunities is that you're going to have a fair share of a good opportunity to hear John at the upcoming Georgia Technology Summit 2015. John, fascinating stuff, interesting perspective, a lot of visionary leadership, thought leadership. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us and sharing a little bit of your time to be on Tech Talk today.
Thanks so much for the conversation.